Some stories do not begin with love. They begin with dust rising behind a wagon that never stops. They begin with a woman standing on a wooden train platform, watching the man who promised to marry her turn his back without a single word. And sometimes they begin with a choice made in that silent moment, a choice to fall apart or to keep walking. In the summer of 1884, the heat in Copper Springs, Arizona, pressed down like a heavy hand. The train had barely stopped before Eliza stepped down onto the platform. She held the iron railing longer than she needed to, steadying herself. Her left leg ached the way it always did after long travel. 18 years since she fell from a loft as a child. 18 years of learning to walk through stairs and whispers. The town looked small and harsh under the sun. Weathered buildings, a church steeple against dry brown hills, horses tied to hitching posts, flicking flies with tired tails. Eliza adjusted her faded blue calico dress and searched the crowd. She knew the face she was looking for. Harlan Cobb, a stout man with a sharp mustache. He had written to her for 7 months, careful letters, promises of partnership. He said he did not care about beauty. He said he wanted a woman who could work hard and keep a home. She had written back just as carefully. She told him she could cook, mend, clean, and nurse the sick. She did not tell him about her leg. She told herself it did not matter. Then she saw him. He stood beside a buckboard wagon at the edge of the platform. Brown vest, sunburned face, hat pushed back, watching the passengers step down one by one. Their eyes met. Eliza lifted her hand in a small wave and stepped forward. The moment her weight shifted to her left leg, she saw it. That small change in his face, the tightening mouth, the narrowing eyes. His gaze dropped to her walk. She kept moving, chin up, pace steady. She had practiced this walk her whole life. When she was 10 feet away, Harlan Cobb shook his head once, not angry, not confused, just decided. Then he turned, climbed onto his wagon, snapped the reins. The wagon rolled away. Eliza stood there with her hand still half raised as dust settled around her boots. He did not say a word. He did not even look back. The platform emptied. Families left. Travelers hurried off. Soon she stood alone with her trunk and the Arizona sun burning down on her bonnet. "Ma'am?" She turned. The station master stood behind her, an older man with tired eyes. "Do you have folks coming for you?" She looked at the empty road where the wagon had vanished. Then she sat slowly on her trunk. "Not anymore," she said. That night she rented a small room at Widow Harmon's boarding house for 50 cents a night. She counted her coins by touch. $2, 37, 4 nights of safety, no more. The next morning she asked about work. The station master mentioned a ranch 2 miles out, the Holloway Ranch. The owner had been sick. No doctor was visiting anymore. 2 miles in the Arizona heat with her leg aching sounded nearly impossible. So was everything else. She started walking before sunrise. By the time she reached the ranch, sweat soaked through her dress. The house sagged in the middle, shutters crooked, garden overgrown. A bay mare stood thin in the corral. She knocked. No answer. The door creaked open on its own. The smell hit her first, sour and wrong. A man lay on a cot against the wall, young, maybe 30, face gray, shirt soaked with sweat, his arm wrapped in filthy bandages. Eliza crossed the room and touched his forehead. It was burning. She unwrapped the cloth from his arm and saw the truth. A deep gash, red streaks climbing toward his elbow. infection spreading fast, blood poisoning. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Once it reaches the heart, there is nothing to be done. She looked at the man's face. His lips moved without sense. 2 miles back to town, hours wasted. He might not have hours. Eliza walked outside, found the well, pumped water until it ran clear. She built a fire in the stove, heated the water. She cut strips from her own white petticoat with a kitchen knife. Then she went to work. She cleaned the wound slowly, carefully. He screamed once and struck her across the cheek. The basin spilled. She steadied herself and started again. Hot compresses, soap, and whiskey. She held his arm firm when he thrashed, brewed willow bark tea, forced it between his lips, and sat beside him through the night while fever shook his body. She talked to him when he drifted in and out of sense, about Ohio, about the train, about the man who left her on a platform because of the way she walked. "He didn't even say anything," she whispered into the lamplight. "He just left." The man did not answer, but by the third morning his fever broke. When she woke to a clear voice asking, "Who are you?" she nearly cried from relief. "Eliza," she said simply. "You aren't dead yet, so that's something." His name was Gideon Holloway, and neither of them knew yet that the woman abandoned on a train platform had just walked into the very place she was meant to stay. The days after Gideon Holloway opened his eyes did not turn easy. Fever was gone, but weakness stayed behind like a shadow. His arm still throbbed. The wound had closed, but the skin was tight and angry, and he could not lift much more than a coffee cup without wincing. Eliza did not ask permission to stay. She simply stayed. Each morning she woke before the sun and checked his bandage. If the cloth had yellowed in the night, she changed it. She pumped water from the well, set it to heat on the stove, and brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead. She found sacks of beans in the pantry, cornmeal in a tin, mutton and bacon grease hardened in a jar. With what little she had, she cooked. Gideon watched her move around the kitchen. He watched her uneven walk. He watched the way she balanced her weight so carefully, but he never once looked at her leg with pity. By the fourth day, he could sit up without help. By the sixth, he made it to the chair near the window. Sunlight fell across his face, showing the sharp lines carved there by loss and long days alone. The house told its own story. Dust coated the windows so thick that the light came through dull and gray. The floor was marked with the same narrow path from the stove to the cot and back again. It was a life shrunken down to survival. Eliza got on her knees with a brush and a bucket of soapy water. "You don't have to do that," Gideon said from the chair. "The floor is filthy," she answered without looking up. "It matters to me." She scrubbed until the wood grain showed clean and pale beneath the grime. She washed the windows twice before the sun poured in bright and warm. She found old checkered curtains balled up in a corner and scrubbed those too, hanging them to dry behind the house. When she rehung them, the kitchen looked different. It looked lived in. Gideon stood in the doorway that afternoon, his good arm braced against the frame. "Looks like somebody cares," he said quietly. She only nodded. Behind the house, she found the garden swallowed by weeds. Beneath the mess, she discovered tomatoes splitting on the vine, squash heavy and yellow, onions drooping in the dirt. They were not dead, just forgotten. She worked until her hands turned black with soil and her leg trembled from crouching. That evening she made real soup, wet tomatoes and onions simmered with salt, cornbread baked golden in the oven. Gideon ate slowly at first, then he asked, When's the last time you had something warm? She asked. He stared down at his plate. I can't recall. Well, that's about to change. On the 8th day, he told her about Margaret. They sat on the porch at sunset. Eliza on the top step, her bad leg stretched out. Gideon in a wooden chair beside her. My sister, he said. Fever took her 2 years back. Eliza did not interrupt. She made the sampler on the wall, did the canning in the cellar, taught me to read. His voice was flat. After she died, I stopped caring. She understood more than he knew. Later that week, they fixed the leaning chicken coop together. Gideon struggled to hold the board steady with one hand. Eliza stepped forward and pressed it into place. I'll hold, she said. You hammer. He raised an eyebrow. Are you going to say please? She met his eyes. Please. Something close to a smile touched his mouth. They worked side by side in the heat. Sweat ran down their faces. Nails went in crooked sometimes, but the boards held firm. When they finished, the coop door swung smooth and straight. Not bad, Gideon muttered. My grandmother built half the barn back home, Eliza replied. I was her shadow. That night he brought out a harmonica. The notes came slow and uncertain at first. Eliza hummed along without thinking. The sound rose into the desert dark like a prayer neither of them knew they were saying. For the first time since Margaret died, Gideon Holloway laughed. The piece did not last. 3 weeks after Eliza first walked through that door, she rode Saudi into Copper Springs for flour and coffee. Gideon pressed coins into her palm before she left. His last savings. She tried to refuse some. Take it, he said. Get what we need. In town, the stairs followed her like shadows. At the Mercantile, Mrs. Cobb stood near the fabric bolts with a tight mouth and colder eyes. Living out there alone with him, Mrs. Cobb said loud enough to carry. No ring limping around like that. Some women have no shame. The words cut deeper than Eliza expected. She kept her face calm, paid for her goods, walked out without a tear, but she carried the hurt home with her. Gideon saw it the moment she returned. Something happened, he said. No, she answered too quickly. That night, through the thin walls, he heard her crying. He did not sleep. The next morning, he rode into town himself. At the feed store, he confronted Harlan Cobb. The words were sharp and bitter. Cobb called Eliza a burden, a crippled cast-off. He said she was ruining Gideon's name. Gideon did not swing, but he did speak, and by the time he rode home with only half the seed he needed, the whole town was talking. Eliza was packing when he walked through the door. I'm leaving, she said without looking at him. I won't be the reason you lose everything. You aren't losing me, he answered. I'm poison to you, she whispered. He crossed the room and caught her hands. You saved my life, he said. You think I care what they whisper? She hesitated. Slowly she unpacked her trunk, but the doubt stayed between them like a shadow that refused to leave. The church social was held on Sunday evening just as the sun began to sink behind the Arizona hills. Gideon told her they were going as if it were the simplest thing in the world. We aren't hiding, he said. Eliza's stomach tightened. The thought of walking into that hall, feeling eyes on her and hearing whispers behind fans made her want to stay inside Margaret's room and never come out. But when Sunday came, she dressed anyway. She wore the same faded blue calico she had worn the day she stepped off the train. The dress was mended at the elbow but clean and pressed. She braided her hair and pinned it neatly. When she stepped into the main room, Gideon was waiting. He had shaved. His white shirt was pressed. A dark string tie rested at his collar. They did not speak on the ride into town. The church hall was already full when they arrived. Wagons lined the yard. Music drifted through the open doors, laughter, conversation. Then they stepped inside. The sound died. It happened slowly at first, a fiddle stopping mid-note, a woman lowering her glass, heads turning one by one until every eye in the room settled on them. Eliza felt it like a weight pressing against her chest. She was suddenly aware of every step she took, of the uneven rhythm of her walk, of the heat rising in her face. Gideon did not slow down. He led her straight to the refreshment table and poured 2 glasses of lemonade. His hand brushed hers as he passed one over. His hand was steady, solid. Then Harlan Cobb pushed through the crowd. "Well now," Cobb said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I didn't expect you to show your face, Holloway. Who brought your little charity case with you, I see?" The words landed sharp in the silence. Gideon set his glass down carefully. "The next word out of your mouth had better be ma'am," he said quietly. Cobb laughed. "Or what?" "I'm not going to hit you," Gideon replied, "but I'm going to tell every soul in this room what kind of man you are." A murmur moved through the crowd. Cobb's smile faded. "You ordered a woman from Ohio," Gideon said, his voice rising just enough to carry. "You wrote her letters, made her promises, told her you wanted a partner. Then you took one look at the way she walked and left her standing on that platform without so much as a goodbye." The room was silent. "Now this woman," Gideon continued, turning slightly so everyone could see Eliza, "walked 2 miles in the Arizona heat to help a stranger. She found me half dead on my own floor. She cleaned a wound that would have killed me. She sat up 3 nights straight so I could breathe another day." Eliza felt her throat close. "She scrubbed my floors, planted my garden, fixed my coop, brought that ranch back to life with her bare hands. You call her shameful?" Gideon shook his head slowly. "The only shame I see is a man who judges a woman's worth by the way she walks instead of what she does." Cobb's face burned red. For a moment it looked like he might swing. He did not. Instead, he turned and walked out, boots striking hard against the floorboards. The door slammed behind him. The silence held for a long breath. Then Mr. Tatum, the blacksmith, stepped forward. "Knew your daddy, Gideon," he said. Then he looked at Eliza. "He'd be proud of you both." One by one, a few others approached. Not the whole town, not even half, but enough to stand near them, enough to nod, enough to speak. The music started again. The ride home felt different. Eliza sat beside Gideon on the buckboard as the sky turned gold and deep red. The desert stretched wide and quiet around them. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why?" "What?" "Why did you do that?" He kept his eyes on the road ahead. It was because it was true. They reached the top of the ridge overlooking the ranch. The house sat below with white curtains glowing in the lamplight. Smoke rose from the chimney. The garden she had saved stood neat and green. "I need to tell you something," Gideon said softly. She turned toward him. "After Margaret died, I stopped caring if I lived or not. That storm that threw me into the wire, I saw it coming. I just didn't move." Her heart tightened. "I was waiting," he admitted, "waiting for the land to finish what had started." "And now?" she asked. He looked at her then, really looked. Now I want to see tomorrow. The words settled between them. Eliza swallowed. You can't put that on me, she said. I can't be the reason you live. You aren't the reason, he answered. You're the reminder. The wind moved softly across the ridge. I want you to stay, he said. Not because you have nowhere else, because this is where you belong. She searched his face for doubt, for pity. She found neither. I don't have much, he went on. The ranch is barely standing. I can't promise ease. I can't promise comfort. But I can promise honesty, and I can promise you'll never stand alone again. Tears blurred her vision, but she did not look away. Do you want me because I'm useful, because I cook and clean? He shook his head. I want you because when I wake up, I listen for your voice, because this house doesn't feel empty anymore, because you walked 2 miles on a bad leg for a man you didn't even know. He hesitated. And because you're the strongest person I ever met. The last light of the sun slipped behind the hills. Yes, she whispered. He blinked. Yes, yes, I'll stay. I'll marry you. All of it. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other under the wide Arizona sky. Then Gideon leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers. Take me home, she said softly. The wagon rolled down the ridge toward the ranch, toward the house with white curtains, toward the lamp glowing warmly in the window. Eliza leaned against his shoulder as the first stars appeared overhead. She had arrived in Arizona abandoned, but she was not leaving it alone. She was going home.